Coming up on Bridge City News, the Alberta government announces the next phase of relaunching our economy, and this one includes movie theaters and spas. Calgary City Council votes unanimously to ban conversion therapy. We have the details. And we hear from the owner of a Lethbridge martial arts facility who says he wants things to return back to normal and he's opening in a week.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Interim Lethbridge Police Chief Scott Woods has responded to stories Bridge City News has covered in relation to bullying and harassment allegations at the Lethbridge Police Service. In a statement earlier today, Chief Woods had this to say: "I am aware of recent media coverage of a local news outlet based on an anonymous source, which has alleged a high degree of dysfunction within the Lethbridge Police Service. On a certain level, there is brokenness within the service. However, much of the dysfunction is derived from a small minority working within the organization who are more concerned with protecting their own interests and influence than maintaining the ideals of serving the public. When this group of individuals is held to account for their own misconduct, they often lash out and accuse others of being bullies. I have tried to address this toxicity and bring reforms to corporate culture. Whatever time I have left as Chief of Police, I will continue to maintain the Lethbridge Police Service as an honourable place to serve the city." The allegations of bullying and harassment are being investigated by the Lethbridge Police Commission. We'll have more on this as the story develops. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Henshaw, says if our province's COVID-19 caseload continues to decline, the government could move up the next relaunch phase. The next phase is set for June 19th when spas, movie theaters, and other businesses could reopen. The province announced today that there were 22 new cases of the coronavirus, bringing the total number to 714 in Alberta. There are 80 active cases here in the South Zone. So far, 6,048 people in our province have recovered from COVID-19. Our country's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Theresa Tam, says long-term care facilities in Canada are still in the thick of the coronavirus fight and cannot be overly prepared for a potential second round of the virus.
I do think that there's more work to be done in that area. Some of the long-term care homes or senior living areas haven't as yet completely extinguished their outbreaks. So that also tells us that we have to just keep going with those capacities, as well as the capacities for infection prevention and control in some of these higher risk settings, including shelters and in correctional facilities. But I think you can never be overly prepared, and that we need to just keep going with some of these capacity developments.
Ventilators, testing equipment, and personal protective equipment are flowing into Canadians' hands from suppliers both at home and abroad. But international demands remain high, which means it is a constant battle to keep the goods going.
We are also proud to announce a contract with GM Canada. Under this contract, 10 million surgical masks and face coverings for Canadians will be produced here at home in Oshawa, Ontario, over the coming year. GM joins a growing list of companies right across the country who are using their manufacturing capabilities and skilled workforce to help shore up the supplies that Canada needs.
In an effort to support local businesses in the downtown core, the City of Lethbridge will be expediting permits for the use of outdoor patios, parklets, and street vending in commercial areas. The Heart of Our City Committee has developed an outdoor patio and parklet support program, which includes planters, bistro tables, and chairs that businesses can borrow. The program will provide matching funding to businesses to help develop their own patio or parklet. A parklet is a temporary seating area that replaces parking spaces by extending from the sidewalk in front of the business and into the street. Officials with Lethbridge County announced today that the Lethbridge Administration Office will be reopening on Monday, June 1st. The Picture Butte and Coaldale locations will remain closed for now. Officials say since the pandemic is ongoing, to ensure that you continue to practice physical distancing, and if you experience any symptoms of COVID-19, do not visit the office. The office will be limited to a maximum of 3 non-employees in the reception area, and it's recommended that only 1 person per family enter the county office. Gyms in Alberta are currently still on the Phase 3 portion of the Alberta government's COVID-19 relaunch strategy. The Canadian Martial Arts Centre in Lethbridge is planning on reopening to the public on June 1st. As Mike Aquin explains, the owner says it's his right to run his business the way he sees fit and thinks it's time to return to the new normal.
Lee Mien is the owner of the Canadian Martial Arts Centre in Lethbridge, and he plans on reopening his gym on June 1st. He says he isn't reopening the gym for himself, but for his students and their mental health.
My reason for wanting to open again was the request of students that were struggling with the mental health aspect of why they started training jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and martial arts in the first place, was they needed something to help them deal with what they were going through and the depression and the anxieties and stuff they had. So that was them that I wanted to open for them, and nothing's happening.
Gyms in BC have been allowed to reopen, and Alberta gyms don't have any protocols in place yet for reopening.
And I saw what BC was doing to the gyms out there for the friends that have that own MMA gyms and jiu-jitsu gyms out there. And the protocols they're making them do don't make any sense to me. They're overkill. There's no common sense approach to it, in my opinion.
The Chief Medical Officer of Health for Alberta, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, was asked a question about the Canadian Martial Arts Centre reopening, and she is stressing for everyone to stay in this together during this time.
Both this owner and those who are considering perhaps attending sites, whether it's his or others, who are feeling frustrated by the limitations and wishing to go against the public health orders. I would say again, we have to stay in this together, and that the reason we have had a low number of cases is because of what we've done together, and we need to continue to protect those who are most vulnerable in our society and limit the spread.
Mien says his intention is not to take the fines or go to court to fight this reopening.
My point is, something has to happen. And when there's things in place that don't make sense, I think we have a right to say something. This is a free country.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Now the businesses in Lethbridge have reopened for just over 10 days. The owner of the Mish Fashion and Swim Store says they're happy to finally be able to reopen.
It's been fabulous to be reopened. It was stressful being unable to open and not allowed to open. It's very stressful as a small business owner. You want to keep your business going. You want to be able to pay the bills that keep coming in. And you're concerned about your staff that no longer have a job, concerned about your own family, all of those things. So it's pretty stressful. We're thrilled to be open. And it's just such a fun place to be. It's fun to see our people.
Cook says there are a variety of customers that generally did not have a lot of concern once they reopen. They're just glad to finally be open once again. During the COVID-19 pandemic, more and more people have turned to growing their own food. Dan's Greenhouse in Lethbridge says their phones and computers have been inundated with orders for both seeds and flowers alike.
We're seeing a lot of people buy more vegetable plants earlier, because we have no more seed potatoes, no more carrot seeds, tomatoes. A lot of things are running out, stuff for the garden. Generally, the people are just buying everything, whatever they see in color, and they'll pick it up. And yeah, it's just been busier than usual. End of April, they've been starting to come in. The weather's been changed and got nice, and now they just seem to want to buy flowers, put stuff in their garden this year. More people have been planting stuff.
The pandemic has forced the cancellations of many graduation ceremonies. Now, there's one local church, however, that has stepped up to offer a drive-in graduation event for high school students in and around Lethbridge.
Any kid that's graduating grade 12 this year, we're hosting an outdoor grad, so it'll be a drive-in kind of a thing. Families can attend, they're going to stay inside their vehicles, but the grads can come either in cap and gown or in their beautiful gowns or suits, and they're going to be going up on a big stage. Walking across the stage, we'll be able to display photos, and then they'll be able to come down and walk through the vehicles, past their parents' vehicle, and just kind of have that moment, that grand march moment or whatever. Everyone that does attend the event, it's going to be following all of the protocols as per AHS, as far as social distancing, people staying in the vehicles, and we're just going to make sure that it's really cool, but also very safe and healthy for everyone to attend.
The ceremony will take place at My Victory Church from June 18th through the 20th. More changes are coming to protect workers at Canada's meatpacking facilities. The president of the Canadian Meat Council says $77.5 million will go towards future changes for plants, including mitigation efforts. Chris White says industry officials are discussing what else can be done to better protect workers. The meatpacking sector was hit hard by COVID-19. Cargill temporarily shut down plants in High River and in Quebec following outbreaks. The JBS beef plant in Brooks temporarily went down to one daily shift from 2. The Cargill and JBS operations account for 70% of Canada's beef production. There will not be a tax increase for residents in Coaldale. Town Council recently approved a 0% change to the residential tax rate. That marks the second year in a row that there will not be a tax increase in the town. The 0% net change was made possible because the town eliminated operational inefficiencies, giving town council the flexibility it needed to hold the line on taxes during the coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, Lethbridge City Council recently announced that there will be no property tax increase here, and that was a change from the original 1.82% increase that was originally in the budget. City Council in Calgary has voted to ban conversion therapy. A bylaw passed yesterday prohibits businesses that claim they can change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. It includes a $10,000 fine for violators. Edmonton, St. Albert, and Rocky Mountain House have also brought forth bylaws banning the practice, and Lethbridge is looking at doing the same. The City of Calgary says their bylaw will operate on a complaint basis and that every call will be investigated. Federal Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says the Liberal government must take a stand against China on the issues of human rights and democracy in Hong Kong and the ongoing imprisonment of Canadians Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada is working to secure the release of the two Michaels.
This Prime Minister has let Canada get bullied and pushed around on the world stage. 2 Canadians are being held illegally. The government of China put blocks on Canadian exports. All the while, this Prime Minister has done nothing. And now the PRC is violating the One China, Two Systems policy and violating the rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong. Why is it so hard? What is he so afraid of to stand up to the PRC? Why does he continue with a policy of appeasement?
My job as Prime Minister is to stand up for Canadians, is to be there to defend the rights of Canadians and protect Canadians both at home and abroad. That is why we have been unequivocal in our defense of the 2 Michaels arbitrarily detained in China. We've continued to work to resolve that situation. We will continue to stand up for the Canadians' rights, for Canadian interests, including agricultural producers and exporters. We will continue to defend Canadian interests everywhere around the world, including with China.
Prime Minister Trudeau also said he will press the provinces for an agreement on making sure workers get up to 10 days of paid sick leave each year.
In every part of the country, hardworking Canadians build prosperity and growth in their communities. To come out of this crisis, our country needs workers, people like you, more than ever. Our government knows that. And we know that you deserve to be treated fairly on the job. This is something that I spoke with the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, about yesterday. Nobody should have to choose between taking a day off work due to illness or being able to pay their bills. Just like nobody should have to choose between staying home with COVID-19 symptoms or being able to afford rent or groceries.
The government of Manitoba will be dishing out $200 checks to low-income people with disabilities to help them during the COVID-19 pandemic. The checks will be mailed out along with a signed letter from the Premier, just like the earlier checks issued for seniors across the province.
The COVID-19 pandemic has created difficulty for virtually all Manitobans. And especially, I would say this is true for the most vulnerable among us. We've endeavored to introduce programs and supports that will assist our most vulnerable, and today I'm proud to announce another one of those programs. Manitobans living with disabilities may be facing additional costs and adjusting to the realities of daily life during this public health emergency, and for many of them it is extremely difficult to cover additional costs. Today we're announcing $4.6 million in immediate and direct support to low-income Manitobans living with disabilities in order to lessen their financial burden.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford expressed frustration with people who packed a Toronto park over the weekend, urging them to now get tested for the coronavirus. Ford says people must continue to respect physical distancing as the province sees increased cases of the virus.
My recommendation, anyone at Trinity Bellwood, why don't you do us all a favor and go get tested now? Go to a local hospital assessment center and get tested. And I encourage anyone who's been in large gatherings like that and some of the stuff that was going on there, they need to get tested. So that's what I would recommend. I'm not going to punish the whole province because a group of people in Toronto ended up getting together, and it's not fair to even everyone else in Toronto as well, in all areas of Toronto that didn't have as I said on Sunday, it was like a rock concert without the band. So these are smart young people that were there. Like, come on, guys, give me a break.
Meanwhile, in Quebec, which has been hit very hard by the coronavirus, Premier François Legault says he's happy that his province hit its goal of 14,000 daily tests. Legault says he wants to ramp up testing in the coming weeks and months.
I would like to do more, would like to go to 16,000, even 20,000 eventually, but we need to have first people that are ready to be tested. That's clear. We want also to focus on certain area where we have more cases. And I'm happy, and I repeat again, if we divide by the population per million of residents, Quebec is testing a lot more than Ontario, United States, France, Germany, UK, Italy. So I think we're doing a lot already, but I want to do even more.
Scientists at a lab in Wuhan, China say they admitted to having 3 live strains of bat coronavirus, but as our Foreign Affairs expert Lisa Daftari explains, they insist none are the source of the coronavirus pandemic.
They admitted to having the 3 strains, but then later say, because we have these 3 strains and because we're able to study them, we'll tell you that there's enough of a difference between COVID and what we're finding in these 3 strains. So we're wiping our hands clean of any responsibility or any direct correlation between these strains and what is spreading around the world.
Catch the full interview with our Foreign Affairs expert Lisa Daftari, who has an update on how countries around the world are now winning the war against COVID-19. That is coming up after Business News. We had lots of sunshine again today and warm, and the mercury will be climbing even further. Complete weather details are coming up. Another beautiful day in the Windy City, lots of sunshine and warm. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, it'll feel even more like summer later this week.
That's right. It sure does feel like summer is coming. This evening, though, partly cloudy skies. We do have a 30% chance of an evening shower. There is a possibility of a thunderstorm this evening as well. It will be clearing overnight. Overnight low 7 degrees and into tomorrow. Clear skies, sunny conditions, high of 18 degrees, and the overnight low 5 degrees tomorrow night. As we look further into the 5-day forecast, lots of sunshine. Thursday, 21 degrees is the high, 25 the high for Friday. And Saturday, a wonderful, glorious 28 degrees. Should be a very lovely weekend. 26 is the high for Sunday with increasing clouds. Mix of sun and cloud on Monday with a high of 24 degrees. Now look at those temperatures. They are climbing into the mid and upper 20s, meaning we are actually surpassing the average highs for this time of year, which is 20. The average lows, 6 degrees. The high temperature on this day was in 1966. It was 33 degrees. And the chilliest night was a -1. It was in 1964. The sun rose this morning at 5:33 a.m. and our evening sunset 9:24 p.m. That's pretty much almost 16 hours of sunlight. And aren't we enjoying it these days? It's nice to have those long evenings finally. As we look to the west coast tomorrow, sunshine in BC, Victoria high 22, 20 in Vancouver. Under sunny skies, sunshine across Alberta tomorrow. 16 is the high in Edmonton, 17 for Calgary. Much the same for the rest of the prairies as we look at Saskatchewan. Saskatoon's high 17, 20 in Regina. Sunny skies for both of those cities. Same thing for Manitoba. Winnipeg's high 25 degrees. Should be a lovely day there. Now, as we look further east into central Canada, there is a heat warning in effect. Humidex high. So Montreal's Humidex is 42, 40 for Ottawa, under 33 degrees Celsius for both of those cities. Partly cloudy skies. 30 is the high tomorrow for Toronto. Definitely get out your sunscreen. It is going to be hot and humid. The humidity lasts into eastern Canada here with a risk of a thunderstorm in Fredericton tomorrow, high of 31, 24 the high for Charlottetown. Halifax high 27, mix of sun and cloud there. Chance of drizzle in Charlottetown for part of tomorrow, and St. John's, Newfoundland could see periods of rain as well. There you go. That is your forecast.
Today's weather highlights are brought to you by Dan's LA Carpet Cleaning. Residential and commercial carpet and furniture cleaning since 1989.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he's working with the UN Secretary General to organize a conference on sustaining the global economy. The idea is to help the world's most vulnerable affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
For so many, this pandemic is devastating. More than 300 million people around the world will be out of work, and more than 30 million people will be pushed into extreme poverty. We can't wait for others to act. It's not in our self-interest, and it's just not who we are. We can and we must seize the opportunity to do what we can to make people safer and more prosperous, to create an international system that recognizes who's left behind and strives to lift them up.
A new study by the Fraser Institute says Ottawa is spending 50% more per Canadian in 2020 than during the 2009 recession. The study says the Liberals spent $13,226 per Canadian this year, as opposed to $8,775 in 2009. Executive Vice President of the Fraser Institute, Jason Clemens, says that's the highest level in Canadian history. The study tracks annual per-person program spending by prime ministers since Confederation. The federal wage subsidy program was meant to help businesses and charities deal with the coronavirus pandemic and not for political parties whose donations have declined. Now that's according to Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet. He said the reason why revenues are down is because last year's election boosted funding for various parties.
Mr. Trudeau today might be a party leader, but he is not a moral leader. He is doing something which is not acceptable. And I have had a look at the social media yesterday, and I believe that Canadians believe the same thing that Quebecers do about that specific issue. It is simply wrong to create a program for businesses and people which are in need and tap into that very program themselves without being in need.
Scotiabank is reporting a second quarter profit that tumbled more than 41% from a year ago to $1.32 billion. It says its provisions for credit losses more than doubled to $1.85 billion as the coronavirus hammered the economy. On an adjusted basis, the bank says it earned $1.04 per diluted share in the quarter. That is down from $1.70 a year ago, but ahead of 98 cents that analysts had expected. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 72 points in the day to 15,148. The Dow was up 529 points to 24,995. The S&P 500 was up 36 points to 2991, and the Nasdaq was up 15 points to 9340. Oil was up 92 cents to 34.17 per barrel. Natural gas was up 4 cents to $1.78. Gold was down 58 cents to $17.10 an ounce, and silver was down 4 cents to $17.09 an ounce. Wheat is at $240 per metric ton. Barley's also at $240. Canola's at $4.69, and corn is at $229 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $1.70 to $99.83. Feeder cattle were up $4.50 to $133.30, and lean hogs were up $1.73 to $61.30. The Canadian dollar was even on the day at $72.99 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Deena Hinshaw, says if our province's COVID-19 caseload continues to decline, the government could move up the next relaunch phase. The next phase is set for June 19th when spas, movie theaters, and other businesses could reopen. Hinshaw reported just 19 new COVID-19 cases yesterday. There are 45 people in hospital, 5 of whom are intensive care. Close to 6,000 people have now recovered from the virus. A new study from Singapore says the COVID-19 virus is no longer infectious after 11 days. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will have more on that study in just a moment. A new study out of Singapore claims that COVID-19 is no longer infectious after 11 days. To talk more about it is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, these findings could cause changes in current discharge policies of patients who tested for the coronavirus.
Yes, so this brings things down just a smidge, right? It's not that big of a difference. We had been told it was 14 days. People were asked to quarantine for 14 days after being infected with the coronavirus. Now they're saying it's 11 days. And as you said, this will help with discharge. This will help with freeing up a lot of that hospital space and the shortage on ventilators and other equipment in hospital beds. This should definitely help a lot. A lot is coming out in the last couple of weeks about how how we once believed this virus does spread. So, for example, last week it was about how it doesn't spread on surfaces. So people were scrubbing down their groceries, they were scrubbing down any deliveries that were coming to their homes. They were worried about it being on their shoes and their clothing, etc. Now we're being told that that's not the case either. So, it's better to be safe than sorry, as the old adage goes, and I think that will continue to be the case. But now we're finding out. We're fine-tuning is a better way of putting it. How exactly this spreads, how long it lasts, and how careful we really need to be. But again, I think the more careful we are, the more successful we will be in hopefully soon eradicating this disease.
Now, a lab in Wuhan, China says they admitted to having not one, not two, but 3 live strains of bat coronavirus, but they insist none of the source of the coronavirus pandemic. That might be a little hard for many people to believe.
Yes, including you and I, correct? You see this headline and all of a sudden you're like, aha, obviously they're admitting to it. But the article goes on to say that they admitted to having the 3 strains, but then later say, because we have these 3 strains and because we're able to study them, we'll tell you that there's enough of a difference between COVID and what we're finding in these 3 strains. So we're wiping our hands clean of any responsibility or any direct correlation between these strains and what is spreading around the world.
China's top diplomat, Wang Yi, accused lawmakers in the United States of wasting time and ignoring lives as the virus continues to spread. Wang says the U.S. needs to stop its smear campaign, Lisa, against his country. He also says the two countries are kind of pushing towards a new Cold War.
Well, that's for sure, right? The war of words between the two has continued on and on. The U.S. blaming China and wanting them to take more responsibility in telling us where this virus originated, and drawing the lines, connecting the dots between this virus and the state of affairs between the two nations before this virus spread, the tariffs, the banter between the two, and not coming to a resolution on economic trade, etc. And China doing the opposite, spreading the propaganda that this was actually perhaps even a U.S. spread virus, and that the U.S. is spreading a smear campaign or blaming all of this on China where there is to be no blame. The bottom line here is that China is at an advantage because they're taking the opportunity to use the rift that already exists within the United States. They might have a direct line to Chuck Schumer, for example, a U.S. lawmaker who says to Donald Trump, let's say it even originated in China. Who cares? What you did was delay your response. When lawmakers in this position of responsibility and power say such things, we give that opportunity to China to say, yep, you're right. It's the U.S. that's really missing, dropping the ball here and missing the opportunity to quickly, triage and do what they need to do with regards to this virus. So, the Chinese have it good because the media here in the United States, the mainstream media, the left-wing politicians, they're all on the side of the Chinese against the President of the United States.
Thousands have been protesting in Hong Kong over a new China security law proposal, Lisa. Hong Kong police fired back with tear gas and water cannons as pro-democracy supporters protest the new Chinese law.
Yeah, if things weren't bad enough to bring the people of Hong Kong onto the streets, this announcement surely will. The Chinese have announced that they will open up a security intelligence office in Hong Kong. We're going back to colonial times, in essence. What they want to do is spy and control and take away any autonomy that the people of Hong Kong have. That's exactly what the people of Hong Kong were on the streets protesting, that they wanted to shake off the control that the Chinese have over them, and now they're trying to exert even more control. Well, obviously this has been met with a lot of outrage by the people of Hong Kong who are out on the streets again and causing a ruckus all over again. And there's going to be no end in sight as long as the Chinese insist on having this control over the people of Hong Kong.
The first of 5 Iranian oil tankers has entered Venezuelan waters carrying more than 1 million barrels of fuel. Now the tankers are being escorted by the Venezuelan Navy and Air Force. The U.S., which is monitoring the situation, imposed sanctions on both countries. Now both Venezuela and Iran have warned Washington, Lisa, to not interfere with the delivery.
Yes, we have an exclusive on this at the Foreign Desk. We looked into this and interviewed some experts on why this would even have to happen. Meaning, you have Venezuela, which is already an oil-rich state. Maybe they're not refining their own oil, but they do have the supply. And then you have Iran delivering the barrels of oil, the amount to which would only last perhaps a few weeks at most, perhaps much less. So the question becomes, are they in fact carrying just oil, or is there more to it? Is this a shipment of other things? Now, we need to back up here and rewind and talk about the relationship between Caracas and Tehran, which has been going on for years upon years while nobody was looking. You had direct flights going between the two nations, carrying members of Hezbollah, a terrorist group supported by Iran, setting up cultural centers within Venezuela, and setting up, more importantly, dual-use businesses that would hide the sale of narcotics, weapons, and funnel terrorism money from Venezuela to Iran and vice versa. So you have this influence of Iranian terrorism, Iranian-supported terrorism, right at the U.S. and Canada's footsteps, right, the North American footstep. Very important story. The influence of the Middle East and, more importantly, of Iran in Latin America is extremely important. It's something that's not talked about enough. And thank you, Hal, for bringing attention to this story. We have to keep our eyes on these ships, where they're going, and more importantly, what are they carrying?
Afghan's President Ghani began a recent process recently of releasing up to 2,000 Taliban prisoners as a goodwill gesture after the insurgents proposed a surprise ceasefire during a recent Muslim holiday.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every year at this time, we talk about the ceasefires and the goodwill gestures of the terrorists during the time of Ramadan and Eid, which is the culmination, is the last day when they break the fast and they stop the fast, basically. It is a widely celebrated holiday within the Muslim countries, and every year they announce they're going to be better and they're going to have a ceasefire, and it's very short-lived. And in this case, you have both the Afghan president and the Taliban, who have not been able to come to terms on anything, announcing a ceasefire and trying to release some prisoners. And before they had talked about releasing these prisoners, they had talked about it in the realm of coming together for a truce. But then when COVID happened, they also released some prisoners because of that. So you have a lot of things going on here, but again, we have to keep our eyes on Afghanistan to see whether or not the Taliban will keep their end of the deal, whether they will allow for there to be some semblance of peace for that country after so many decades of war.
While many countries around the world are making great strides against COVID-19, Lisa, hospitals in Chile are under tremendous strain as coronavirus cases there near 70,000.
Yes, and 70,000 is probably a lower number when you look at somewhere like New York or Italy. But for a country the size of Chile, with their resources or lack thereof, this has been horrific. In Latin America, you have Chile and Brazil that are really under the buckle here. Their cases are growing exponentially. And again, with their lack of supplies, they are not able to fight or to be able to handle the number of cases that increase day by day.
Now, speaking of South America, U.S. President Donald Trump has issued travel restrictions of non-U.S. citizens coming from Brazil as the Latin country sees a surge in coronavirus cases as well.
Yeah, Brazil is over 300,000. So Brazil has been number 3 in the world with the number of cases, and their number of deaths are still multiplying. They have not hit their peak yet. They are definitely long away from flattening the curve, so to speak. So Donald Trump has announced that non-citizens traveling from Brazil will not be able to come into the United States. Obviously a logical and practical move for a leader to do that, to hopefully prevent the spread from Brazil again back into the United States.
One of the stories we've been talking about here at Bridge City News is the thousands of people that showed up at a park in Toronto recently. They've had enough being cooped up, self-isolation. They went out there, many without masks. But let's also talk about where you are in the United States, the thousands who flocked to beaches in Maryland, Florida during the Memorial Day long weekend, many without face masks, not physical distancing. There were also pretty big gatherings at the Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah, yeah. If you haven't seen these photos, it's as if they were trying to pack into these pools and lakes and beaches like sardines, as if, there was, forget about social distancing. It's as if they were trying to be extremely social. Um, this is, you know, be logical. That's all I can say. We talk about this all the time in my family. It's a matter of taking responsibility, each person unto themselves and to others. Look, as things open up, I think people have been cooped up, and I get that. They want to be out and about, particularly with the holiday weekend here in the United States. We have Memorial Day weekend and the summer months coming. So I know that people are just itching to get out, but at the very same time, we don't want to see a resurgence of this, and we don't want to see yet another curve. And people have to be smarter than that. Go out, but be careful. Keep your distance. Here in Los Angeles, the governor has announced we're going till July 15th, and we're going to reevaluate at that point. That's a long time. It's almost all of summer. And people are with their kids. They want to get to the beaches. They want to get to the parks. They want to get fresh air. And I think it's people are going to start doing things underground and against the law because they want to get out. And again, if we are each careful and able to keep our distance, maybe we can get out and at the same time prevent from the surge in the number of cases as well.
Yeah, we have to take the precautions. We don't want another deadly second wave of COVID-19 hitting so many of our schools, seniors' homes, and of course, all around the world right now. Australia's most populous state is bracing for travel chaos as schools and offices reopen there.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how Australia gets so many headlines when they had so few cases. They had about 7,000 cases and about just over, I think, 100 or 200 or 3 deaths. Look, even one death is too much. I don't mean to belittle anyone who is experiencing this with their families. But at the same time, would we be having this conversation if this were just another year of the flu and the numbers look pretty much the same or even worse? It's a pandemic. So that's why we talk about even Australia. And Australia has been extremely methodical in how they open up, even though they have such few numbers. So with a 102 death rate, they still have a 3-phase plan as to how to open in a way where children who are returning back to school or people who are traveling to certain travel destinations or hitting the beaches, etc., that they are able to keep within the guidelines of the phase that they are in order to prevent the second wave from occurring. So I think Australia is a great place to watch and see how they unfold this 3-phase plan and how it does. And we'll look at their numbers and hope that we can replicate that, and as long as we get good results.
Let's bring things a little closer to home now, Lisa. Experts found bones of dozens of mammoths in Mexico City. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is an interesting little story. This excites people who are involved in anthropology and in excavations. This is a follow-up from a whole family of these animals that were found in October of 2019, just about 6-7 months ago. And now they're finding more and more within the same area. So there's a story to be told here. And people who are involved in these excavations and have dedicated their lives to the anthropology, they love to put the story together. So there's obviously a bigger story here of a family of these animals, or a community of them that lived in New Mexico. And again, to put that story together it's very interesting. When I was in 5th grade, I remember going to a quarry and finding one person in the class found a dinosaur imprint, which is it's so interesting for people to put these stories together. And nowadays, to find something from way back when and to put these bones together, it's really fascinating.
And for me, I just had a flashback to the Flintstones. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thanks, Lisa.
My pleasure.
Children today are constantly using digital devices, gaming systems, computers, and cell phones. Unfortunately, this does bring with it the risk of encountering online predators. How much responsibility for their safety should we be carrying as parents and adults? To talk more about it is Charlene Dokebauer, founder of Internet Sense First and author of The Internet, Are Children in Charge? Charlene, welcome back to BCN.
Well, thank you for having me, Hal. It's great to be here.
Charlene, share a little bit about your group and how it all began for you.
The Charity Internet Sense first started because we had a family member affected by the crime of child pornography at the age of 4 by neighbors. And yes, I say neighbors. We can't trust anyone anymore, it seems. And eventually, she lived her life independently, got into drugs and alcohol, and then was killed by a drunk driver when she was 22. And as a network administrator, I discovered child pornography. I don't talk about the employer because I did a lot of freelancing as well. And you don't know that garbage until you see it. And once that happened, I decided to start a charity in memory of my family member and in support of all children online.
And you do some public speaking and teaching on this, and you have some teaching materials for parents as well?
Mainly my book is probably the best resource for parents because it's very comprehensive. I do speaking. I've spoken in Iceland, Europe, India, the United States, Canada, and I go where I'm asked. And I believe that everyone needs to know about my theory of digital supervision.
Charlene, how many parents actually monitor their kids' online activities? Do we actually know what they're watching, or are we dropping the ball sometimes?
Most parents are dropping the ball all the time, I have to say, because the vulnerabilities of our children are huge now. They can be on any platform, and predators know exactly where they are. That's where they go, where their prey is. And the other big problem is that children are becoming the victimizers because of what they're seeing online. There's an epidemic of child on child sexual assault that I can get into in a few minutes and in a little more detail.
But getting back to the predators for just a moment here, Charlene, are a lot of, let's say, adults posing as maybe 13 or 14-year-old boys or girls online?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. 9, 10-year-old children. They can even get machines that will disguise their voice as a young child, which makes it so difficult for our children.
I hear many parents say simply, you know what, I can't keep up. My kids know a lot more about technology than I do. So if that's the case, what do you say to those parents? How do you encourage them?
Well, I encourage them to realize that I'm not pointing my finger at parents that they're not doing a good job. I'm saying that traditional parenting is still necessary, but we need to digitize our parenting. We're very busy taking our children to school, hockey games, basketball, dance classes, and then we give them the key to our router. And these children are the most independent of any generation in the history of the world. And we have to start supervising them while they're on digital devices. In my theory of digital supervision, I've written to be very user-friendly so that parents are not intimidated. We just had a summit in London, and it's called the International Summit to End Internet Child Exploitation. It was very well attended. We had people from Africa, Spain, Colombia, all over the place. One father bought my book, and he said, I can't tell you the relief I have in practicing digital supervision. I actually have a handle on what my children are doing. And I also want 6 more books. And I said, why? You want to read it 7 times? And he said, no, I want it for the parents of my children's friends so that they will be practicing digital supervision as well.
You know, Charlene, parents can't be everywhere all the time, and it's hard to keep track of what our kids are watching. Perhaps parents need to be a little more intentional. Do we need to really map out a plan, that digital plan that you were discussing?
Absolutely. One thing I mentioned in my book is that parents should draw up a contract of use with their children. And I say with them. You sit at the table together with them and say, this is the cell phone. We're docking it at 7 o'clock at night. You can pick it up at 7 o'clock in the morning. We will be going through your cell phone, looking at pictures, because the epidemic of nudes for these children is huge. They're taking pictures of themselves nude, sending them, and even though it's their body, they're producing and distributing child pornography, which then the parents own, because essentially the parents own the cell phone. And when I talk to parents about that, they say, you mean we're responsible? Yes, you are, for a minor's activities, but they cannot own a cell phone until they're 18. So therefore, it is your plan, your phone, your iPad.
Is that considered sexting then, when a lot of these kids are taking pictures of their private parts or nude photos and sending them to each other? Is that what they call
That's
sexting?
sexting. Yes, it is, Hal, and it's epidemic. I've talked to so many principals. Every time I speak in a school, a principal will whisper and say, "We've had a child charged for this." And I say, "No need to worry about it. It's in every school. It's in Canada, the United States, England, New Zealand. It's everywhere." And if people would start practicing digital supervision, which is user friendly, they would know what their children are doing.
How about if we took that router and kept it in the parent's bedroom and maybe continually change the password each day?
I advise everyone to put the router in the parental bedroom for two reasons. Number one, you can turn it off at night. Someone complained about what about the electronics in the bedroom, and I say it's not going to bother you if it's turned off. And the other reason, you can turn it off, your kids can't turn it on if it's in your bedroom. But the second reason is you're telling your children you're in charge. The location of the router in a common area is not a good idea. If we're paying for it, our children need to know.
I have some parents that tell me, you know what, when you finish your homework, then I'm going to give you access to the new password for Wi-Fi. And a lot of times the kids do their homework is that they keep changing and updating it each and every day. Now, Charlene, should we also invest in some software to block pornography sites in our homes?
There are two ways of looking at that. You can get software to block pornography, and that will wear off when the child's about 8 or 9. They can work around software very easily. For as part of digital supervision, I tell parents to make sure they have a filter between their router and the computer, the host computer. And the router can divide the internet. There's one company that calls it a bright web, so that the child will go up into the bright web and be able to go on the internet without going on sites like that. The unfortunate thing is that does not work when the child is on a cell phone or they're gaming. Gaming can cause a few more issues so that the child cannot be as easily monitored. So parents need to be aware of that and realize that humanity has to supervise humanity. We need to be around the devices. We need to review browser history. And when children realize their parents are reviewing the browser history, as a former educator, I know they'll erase it and put up the science project and the research on history. We need to start looking at the actual history, looking at what they're doing. If a child turns off a monitor as soon as you go into a room, you go in and turn it back on. You don't let them off with that. Who is in charge? Right now, our children are in charge of the internet too often. We need to take charge and take our children back and be able to talk to them and supervise them.
I love that, absolutely. Now, what do we need to teach our kids specifically when it comes to online safety? Avoid chat rooms, for one?
Avoid chatting, avoid sending anything like a picture without the geolocator being turned off, things like that. And what I tell everyone now is that our children, in many ways, are being given too much ownership for decisions online. For example, a child knowing at the age of 8 whom they should speak with online is asking an awful lot of an 8-year-old. I don't know of an 8-year-old that plans dinner, let alone who they're going to talk to online. It's a tough call, and parents need to be talking to their children a lot about that. They need to be online games to see how their children are communicating online. Is your child a bully or a victim or a victimizer? Are they bullying a child into sending a nude, which is happening too much? Do you know if your child is going to commit suicide? They communicate all this online. If you're not online supporting your children and supervising, we are lacking in our parenting skills. We need to digitize.
You know what's really scary as well at the same time, Charlene, is how much information kids share with strangers as opposed to their own parents who love and care for them. Do parents need to set a firm limit on how much time kids spend on their digital devices? You mentioned something about 7 o'clock, give me your phone until maybe 7 o'clock the next morning, and as well, maybe social media sites?
Yes, now that can be difficult because even when I'm at a business meeting, I'll ask everyone to put their phones away because it's intimidating when someone's looking at a phone and you're a speaker. Try telling a child you're taking away their cell phone, which is why a contract before they even get a cell phone is so important. They're on digital devices too much. Yes, there should be limitations. And it's kind of funny, Hal, at this point that people will tell them you're only going to watch TV tonight. You can't go on the iPad. And I just sort of, that's punishment, is going on television rather than being online. There's just so much in my book about this, taking away a cell phone, what you need to look out for, what you need to look out for with a child that might be groomed by a predator. There's so much in digital supervision, but you know what, Hal? We can all do it, and we have to do it.
Charlene, is it too harsh saying kids should not have cell phones until maybe the age of 14 or 15, or waiting to have an Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, or Facebook account until they're about the same age?
It's not out of the question, but I think my words would be good luck because so many children have them. It's again, if parents are giving the cell phones, tell your children you're going to be checking everything on that cell phone. And I mean everything. You press on every icon. They will create an icon for their nudes that looks as though it's a calculator or just a beach somewhere. Do children lie? Of course they do. I've been a teacher at parent-teacher night, and parents will say, my children never lie to me, and I would look at them and say, well, I lied to my parents. In fact, my poor sainted mother, I probably still tell the odd lie. We do. We want approval from our parents. We want to get off with things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. And this is where digital supervision comes in. Don't let them lie to you about the internet. Supervise. And you mentioned TikTok. TikTok is a very scary environment because kids are doing live streaming of nudes, of dancing and things like that. And I hesitate to mention one environment because this can happen anywhere. We have Facebook, we have FaceTime, we have live streaming everywhere. And predators love to get the live streaming. They are recording it as a child is doing it, but the child thinks it's being erased. And then the predator will sell it. And then when the child might find out who's looking at my pictures today, it's just a never-ending story.
Yeah, it's a dark world we're living in right now. Now, part of the challenge is that your kids will have access to their computers and their phones during school hours, and you're at work. How do you manage that?
Well, for one thing, I advise everyone on a cell phone especially to put a keylogger on. And a keylogger will record every key that a child presses on the cell phone, as well a comprehensive one will record all the pictures. And a parent can put that on before the child even gets the phone, and every night they can have a report sent to them so that they will know exactly what the child is involved in. You can put a type of filter on cell phones. Again, the kids can get around them. They talk about this in school all the time. We get around all that. But the keylogger is a pretty good source. Looking at it is another one. I had one parent actually take her router to work every day.
Wow.
Which, because she had an extreme problem with her child.
Wow.
And it's difficult.
But you know, if the child has a data plan, who needs the router? How many parents actually take the time to sit down with their kids and have a really good heart-to-heart talk about internet safety and the potential consequences?
Very few. I've talked to people just casually about digital supervision. And one fellow said, well, I talked to my 14-year-old son last night and he told me he didn't do anything and I'm good with that. And I'm like, really? Your child is lying. There's no question. The kids are all involved in this stuff. And I looked at him. I thought, no, I don't think I need to go any further. He was just blocking it. He should be looking at the devices every day at random. Take a look. See what your kids are doing. See what pictures are on their galleries. I've interviewed kids in high school that said there are thousands of these nudes on on galleries. Are parents looking? They couldn't be because the parents can be charged for possession of child pornography. And we had an incident in London, Ontario. A 9-year-old was sending videos over TikTok to a 35-year-old. And the FBI tipped off the police. And this is a scenario most parents would not want to have. The police came knocking at their door at 6:45, opened the door, confiscated all computer equipment, the parents and the child's, because the parents are suspect. Are they allowing this? Because there are some parents allowing this and selling these videos for their income. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Do you want to have that conversation with the police? And that's not just parents, grandparents. Are kids visiting you with your wide open networks? Are you looking at what they're doing while they're in your home? A child visiting another kid, what are they doing?
Yeah, that's incredible. Charlene Doka-Bauer, founder of Internet Sense First, thanks a lot for joining me today from Ontario.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you so much.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.